Then we get to his introduction to Dinah and his first time he's like talking to her, and starts off with the old 7 words. I was wondering what you're doing here. What's interesting about that is he says that, and then Elodin later on is like, there's 7 words that will make a woman fall in love with you, and there's always these weird parts with Elodin where he like either knows what Kvothe is doing or can see what Kvothe did. He can like read him like a book because there's this part where Kvothe says those 7 words to her, and then Elodin talks about the 7 words to make a woman fall in love with you, and then Kvothe, obviously, for the rest of the time he knows Dinah, he speaks to her in 7 words constantly.
So I noticed that there's a contraction in there. Is that allowed?
Yes, that's 1 word.
Okay.
Contraction's 1 word.
All right.
But you also get it with, like, there's a part where Elodin asks him, like, Manette, when they're playing cards together, he's like, 3 spades have been laid down. There's 5 left in your hands. How many spades is that? He's like, 8 spades. Elodin asks him the same exact question. There's a time where when he's going to play for his talent pipes, Willem is like, spit for luck over this bridge. And then when Kvothe is leaving Imre to go to the mayor's place, Elodin stops him, talks to him for a bit, and then before he walks off, he's like, hey, spit for luck. So there's this weird dynamic with Elodin where it seems like he's either watching Kvothe or he's able to read things that have happened to Kvothe. There's this weird interconnectedness with them that it seems like he knows more than he's letting on.
That makes me think he's a mirror.
Possibly, yeah. I don't know.
I mean,
I take it more of his naming prowess, that he's able to see him in a similar way like the Cathay can see him, but maybe not that omnipotent. But he when he says he feels like he's like reading him like a book, and I think he might be able to in a sense.
And we hear that a lot when he looks at you. He looks into you. Like he can see into you. And so this might be, it's going to seem like this is off topic, but I don't think it is to a degree. So Elxadal knows the name of fire, right?
Yeah.
And he can make fire. So he does it, and Kavoth's like, whoa, how do you do that? Blah, 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 blah. And then he says there's more to it than just making fire. And then he puts his hand in the fire, comes back out, and he's unscathed. My point in that is if Elodin is able to tap into all these other things, then perhaps, because we've talked about this before, where time is not necessarily linear, right? So if it's, I don't know, it's hard to describe what Elodin might be doing here, right?
Well, I think the best example of being able to read someone like a book is in Hespe's story, when Jax goes to the hermit in the cave, and the hermit like looks through his pack, and he's like, can you open this 3rd pack? I can't get it open, and it's tied up with the knots, and he looks at the knot, and he's like, you've been trying to chew this open with your teeth, and you've been biting it. And he's like, yeah, I've tried everything I could. And he knows like what he's done from the knot. He can like look at the knot and like speak to it like it's a living thing. And then when he looks at the different objects, he doesn't just know what the objects are. He can like speak to the objects. So it seems like he has this like deep understanding of things, and it seems like that Elodin also has this ability to just kind of look at things and be able to understand them or to speak to them, and to kind of gather information that you typically would not be able to gather from looking at a person or looking at inanimate objects. So
it'd be like you're seeing the experiences that these things have been through, or these people have been through. Yeah. In the Hespe's story, he's like saying like the rope told him what he did to. No, I hear. But like I think that I think like as far as like what would make more sense is that he's able to just kind of
look at these things and then intuitively figure out what has happened and be able to see into their past or into their future or things like that.
Well, doesn't Kavoth describe the namers as, and I think this happens in one of the very first chapters, but when you're able to name something, and when you're able to name something well, it's not just knowing the name of something, it's knowing that thing inside and out. Even better than that thing knows itself, when you're able to name something, you know it completely.
Well, we get another example of that with Celatos and Scarpy's story, when Celatos is able to, when he gets his powers back and he looks into Haliax, it's not just that he now sees that Haliax is bad, he sees what happened to Haliax. He sees that he tried to kill himself, and he sees into his past. He sees these things. So that's the kind of sense that I get with Elodin. It's not that he's necessarily spying on him, that he is so fucking powerful that he's able to, like Celatos could look into Haliax and see exactly what he did, that he went look for knowledge he shouldn't look for, he killed himself, blah, blah, blah. I think Elodin is looking into Kavoth in that way.
So when, in the same vein, when Kavoth is playing Wind Turning a Leaf, he's understanding Wind Turning a Leaf. He's embodying it.
Yeah.
And that's what you're hearing. He's encapsulated what that is. It's understanding what it is.
Yeah.
So it's that sleeping mind stuff, man. It's going back to that. It's because with Elodin, I mean, it almost seems effortless.
Yeah, it's extremely powerful.
Yeah. It's a very interesting character.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an understatement. I mean, he's one of the most interesting I've ever read.
Yeah, and then we also, this is where we get Master Elodin, our first introduction. He's one of my favorite characters in both books.
Yeah.
And you get he's at least, a dozen years younger than the youngest of the other 9 chancellors, the other 8. So there's 9 of them total. But he's like, I felt Master Elodin look at me. I actually felt it. I suppressed a shiver.
So I caught that too.
Yeah, you get that sense of like, Elodin is extremely powerful, and and like we talked about just earlier in this episode, like it seems like he's able to read him like a book.
Yeah, it's that namer thing where he can just see everything about Kavoth just by looking at him.
It's interesting too because the subtlety is when he first speaks, he had an accent that I couldn't quite place, or perhaps it was his voice held a certain resonance. When he spoke, everyone at the desk stirred slightly, then grew still, like leaves touched by the wind. So that's
interesting.
There's like
I didn't pick up on that.
There's like a feeling in the room. You can there's like and it embodies everyone. And what Dan was talking about earlier, it's so well put, where they describe him, how his mannerisms or, how he acts. One moment watching something intently, the next minute bored and letting his attention wander among the high beams of the ceiling above. He was almost like a child who had been forced to sit down with adults.
Hey, Tim, you said that it reads leaves touched by the wind, which I'll just throw out that was, I believe, one of the first things that Kavoth played on his lute after he quit playing songs.
Yeah. When turning a leaf, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, there's definitely something to Elodin. Obviously, we know through going through the books, he's powerful. And the other masters seem to sense it. But then also, after Elodin asks him his questions, asks him, like, how many fingers am I holding him up? He asked him these silly questions, but he was digging for information that he wanted to know for some reason. But after he asks these questions, he goes, the Chancellor jumps in and he's like, that seems to cover most of academia, the Chancellor said, almost to himself. I had the impression that something had unsettled him, but he was too composed for me to tell exactly what. So I'm like, obviously, what unsettled him? Does he see something in Kavoth based on his answers? Maybe the questions that Elodin asked him and something about his answers unsettled the Chancellor? Or is it because Elodin participated and took an interest in Kavoth, is that what unsettles him? Knowing Elodin and what they locked him in the rookery, and so the fact that Elodin, maybe he doesn't take an interest in students, and now that to see him take an interest in Kvothe like that unsettles him. Obviously, we don't have any clarity to it, but it is something that I'm curious what unsettled him exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. He does a really interesting job with Elodin, because there are these things that happen around him. It's the way people act around him. The other masters, the way they act around him. They don't treat him like they kind of laugh at him at times.
Treat him like he's crazy, but also that he's dangerous and not to be trifled with.
Yeah, because they have to respect the fact.
Smarter than him.
And then you come to learn over time, like they respect the fact that this dude has access to knowledge and abilities that none of them have.
Yeah.
And
that naming is deep.
What's that?
I said that just the naming side of it. He's a great namer, and when you can name things, it's a sixth sense or something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
They have obviously some sort of fear of him. They locked him in the rookery and he escaped, and there was nothing they could do about it. There is some sense that he's got some powers that they don't fully have. They can't even grasp. Like they have to respect him. They have to appreciate, how powerful he is.
Oh, I wanted to go back for a second. When he's talking about he was eavesdropping, and he heard about how high the students' tuitions were set, and the lowest was like for whatever. He says it would be easier for me to get a piece of the moon than that much money.
Yep, they bring it up again, Tim. You're right. He's dropping hints there about Kvothe and Ajax.
Yeah, there's a lot of mentions of the moon. It's tough to know what to make of it, but there's a lot of mentions of the moon with him, with Denna, with Ari, the moon, with Ajax stealing the moon. There's something to it. It's just we're missing a massive piece of the puzzle to be able to figure out what aspect of it is important.
It's one of those things that can be read multiple ways, because first read through I'm like, it's just an idiom. It's something that they, in this world, it's like it's something they say. And it's something that people probably said in our world for a while. You don't hear it too much these days, but it's a wonderful life. It fits. The line, right?
I'm on it, yeah.
It's going to last till the moon.
No, and it wouldn't have...
Dan doesn't know the line. It's outside of his expertise.
No, I'm not 100 years old watching outdated movies that weren't even good when they came out.
Outdated. Only new. Only the newest of the new are quality.
Yeah. The craft of acting has massively improved from Fred Astaire and Humphrey Bogart and those fucking nerds. Overacting. They were like trying to do plays on camera. It's just terrible. There's nothing good about it. Anybody who likes old movies
Dan only likes
just
reality
has terrible
TV.
taste, and they shouldn't express their opinions on movies.
We're really cutting our audience. I mean, already the cloak wearers, they tuned out a while ago.
You wear a cloak,
75% of
here.
them.
You like old movies? Get it moving. We're not for you.
No, that's not true.
That's not true, because I like old
folks.
movies. I watch TCM all the time. So
I like.
Well, don't listen to me then. Mute my part of the conversation. You're not allowed to hear what I say. If you like cloaks and old movies.
I think we do need to recognize that Fitz says he likes overacting.
Yeah, I'm a little numb.
Who does not like overacting?
I don't pick up a lot of subtle cues, so that overacting. Jim Carrey, one of my favorite fucking actors, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, what were you talking about earlier about the differences in characters? Elxadal is a better teacher than Lauren. Arwyll is not as good a teacher in my mind as Elxadal, but he's better than Lauren. Kilvin's a really good teacher. They have their different nuanced ways of influence, but Kilvin really isn't that empathetic. Well,
he 100% is. He's very gruff and he's a very hard person. Yeah. Like he's basically like what I'm saying. Like Lauren should
a
be
better version
if you
yeah.
wanted to be a good teacher.
Well, so I was gonna
Kilvin is that version.
and I was gonna say Elodin is is such an interesting.
He's a terrible teacher.
Yeah, but he's God, he's so
but
interesting.
He's very fucking interesting, entertaining.
I remember more than any of them.
He's just got an impossible task.
Yeah,
is what he's trying to teach is nearly impossible.
Well,
he's effective though.
What I found really interesting out of the groups of the different teachers and their interactions with Kavoth is there's not a lot of them, but I really like Elk Sadal and how he works with them. There's a few times where with Kilvin where I'm like, this guy is a legit good teacher. Like this is what you would want in terms of the guidance. I remember that from both of them. Arwell as well, not quite as much, but a little bit. And then him's the antithesis. And then Lorne's just, I mean, it makes sense. He's a fucking librarian. You know what I mean? Like that's why he has the role that he has. He's protecting the books.
Yeah, I wanted to.
Yeah, he's very different.
And I personally liked Elodin's style. Even though he's eccentric,
I love the character.
Sure,
I think he's one of my favorite characters I've ever read in any book.
Yeah,
and I think
100%. I love Elodin. Like I'm just saying, like if I was looking for a teacher, like there's a lot of things that I picked up on the subtly what he was trying to teach, and it's harder to I can't remember what it was like the first time I read shit that Elodin was teaching, but I know when I go back through them now, like I know, like when with the seeds that he has floating in the air, and he's fucking running around like a madman trying to grab him. And he falls over and bangs his knee, and then when he's like laying on the ground, then one of them like flies into his mouth. I get what he was trying to teach there. Like he was trying to teach that the harder you fucking try to grab at naming, the harder you try to learn naming, the more impossible it's going to become, and the more dangerous it becomes. You can hurt yourself. And he's like, but once you sit down and stop fucking trying, then all of a sudden one of these fucking things just pops in your mouth without you even fucking trying. And so that's a lesson, and they just look at him like, the fuck is this crazy person doing?
What's so great?
But what makes him what I would say is like what makes him a bad teacher is I know that because I'm able to read these books multiple times. But he could have just fucking said, this was the fucking lesson. After he did all that, like, did you guys understand why I did that? He could have asked them the questions, like, do you understand what I was trying to show you there? But he's just like, no, if they don't get it, they don't get it.
I also like the genius of Rothfuss writing that particular scene is it makes it that more difficult to take him seriously, because not only does the seed pop in his mouth, he starts choking and violently coughing. Yeah. He just looks foolish. He looks completely ridiculous. It's just it's so great, man. And it's very interesting because he seems to be like a genius of sorts, but he can't relay it, which is why he's basically a bad teacher. But he's the example. He's kind of, he's what I always like. And there's certain teachers that I've had that help me to do it is sort of questioning your existing notions, challenge your perception, basically. It's a hard thing to help people to do because you have to use those sort of examples. You got to use like a lot of metaphors and stuff. And if people aren't in the vein and in the lane to be listening, then it doesn't work. And that's the problem that Elodin has, is he's not getting people in the lane. He's just doing these things and they're all like, what the fuck are we doing?
So
this is a waste of time.
I'll just throw this out there though. I think the way that Elodin teaches is in the vein of the thing that he's teaching. When you're, at least as far as I understand, when you're naming, it's not something that you can teach. It's something that it's more like something that's in you, that's in your subconscious. That it's not you don't get to just learn it. He can't tell you what the name is. You have to learn it. You have to know it inside you. You can't really. Anyway, that's what I got from naming.
But he kind of he gets that when he's with the Adem, And they sort of teach him that because they start asking him questions and he's giving bad answers, and it's because he's thinking. And then when he stops thinking and he just says it, it's like, oh shit, starts to click in his mind.
Yeah.
So this is something to
Well, like I'll give you a perfect example of probably the most crystal clear example of Elodin is great at getting people to gain knowledge, but not a great teacher. Is the very first lesson, he has a list of books for them to go find. And he's like, I don't, you don't need to read them. Like, read 2 of them and then skim the rest. And they're like, which books should I read? And he's like, I don't fucking know. I've never read any of these. And he's just like, who fucking gives a shit? Do whatever you want. I don't fucking care. And then they go into the libraries, and through hunting through the libraries to find these books, they learn the library. They learn how to find books in the library, to navigate these places, to understand, like, if I needed to find a book, they learn how to find a book in the library through this exercise. So he teaches them invaluable information on how to utilize and to navigate the libraries. But then he gives them this amazing education. But then when they come back the next day, and he doesn't even fucking show up, and he just writes discuss on the fucking board, they're like, you motherfucker. Like, go fuck yourself. They don't even realize the knowledge he imparted on them. It's why I always am like, this dude's like fucking Mr. Miyagi, except for he never is like, dude, show me wax on. Like, he fucking teaches them wax on, but he never is like, show me wax on. That analogy. Like, he never lets them know that I've been teaching the whole fucking time. So they're just always thinking like, this fucking dude is a jackass.
That's a good example.
Show me sand the floor.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to, the last little point I had on the 4-plate door is, I think that, and I haven't seen anybody else bring this up. I'm sure someone's talked about it, but I think maybe that what drove Elodin mad was trying to get in the 4-plate door. I think trying to open it might have been what cracked his mind.
I really want to hear that story. Like, and they don't tell it, but I really like, because they allude to it like before it happened, and no one wants to talk about it because it seems like it was so upsetting. Like Sims, well, sort of that guy anyway. But yeah, man.
So like he goes like, Kavoth asks him about it, and he's like, "Oh no. You don't aim for small secrets, do you?" He clapped me on the back as if I'd made an especially good joke. Valeritas, God, I can remember what it was like. Standing down there, looking at the door, wandering. He laughed again. Merciful Telu, it almost killed me. He shook his head. No, you don't get to go behind the 4-plate door. But he gave me a conspiratorial look. Since you are a Relor, he looked me from side to side as if afraid someone might overhear us. I leaned closer. Since you are a Relar, I will admit that it exists. He gave me a solemn wink. So like the merciful Telu, it almost killed me.
You think that's suggesting,
knowing the way he speaks and the way he talks, and like how there's almost hidden meaning behind everything he says, it leads me to believe that maybe he lends Kavoth to believe that they know what's behind the door and they have access behind the door. It could be that that's not the case, and that he's actually, when he's saying it almost killed me, he's being literal. It almost killed him trying to get behind that door. Maybe that's what made him crack. That's, as far as like going through both books, that's my only guess on what's made him crack, is trying to get behind that door.
So could it be that door is those 4 doors that we're always talking about, the doors of forgetting, and the doors of sleep, forgetting, madness, and then death? And I mean,
could be. I just don't know how it would fit together.
I don't either. I just see a correlation there.
I like that theory about Elodin. because I mean, I just read that and I was like, man, I want to know what happened. I want to know, because he's got such an amazing like mind and instincts, and when he goes and sees his little buddy there, and we go to the rookery. Yeah, it just was really intriguing to me. It's sort of, I want to know that story, and that actually speaks to it. Yeah,
I get the idea that like just opening doors like this would be there'd be an extreme cost you would have to pay, and I think that he tried to pay the cost and it almost killed him, almost fucked his mind where he went crazy for a couple of years. Like, he's very powerful, and he lost his mind for a couple of years.
That's
like
saying a lot.
It seems like the 4-plate door would be the spot in the university would be like trying to open that door. Seems like a logical place for an explanation on what cracked his mind. It would be trying to open this door.
Yeah, that third door.
Yeah, and then we move into chapter 46, which is titled The Ever-Changing Wind. And this chapter, he goes to Elodin and tries to get him to teach him, and Elodin does everything in his power to convince Kavoth not to, hitch his wagon to him, tries to convince him that he shouldn't try to look to Elodin to be a teacher. He doesn't want to do it. And he takes him to the rookery, and he sees what the dangers of learning naming can be, what can happen to your mind, and eventually the great scene with him jumping out the window and falling and screwing himself up and realizing that maybe learning from Elodin's not the greatest thing.
Yeah, I mean, this chapter is so great. This chapter sort of sets the path for the way I see Elodin through the rest of the books. Just how kind of unpredictable he is, how childlike he is, and but also how brilliant he is at the same time. It's really, really interesting. The more I've like reading through this again on this read through, I'm picking up little things where I'm like, is he trying to teach him here? Because like he's trying to he's telling him no. He continuously telling him no in so many different ways. But then at the same time, I'm kind of wondering, is there a subtlety to what he's doing, and trying to hint along the way how it works, how naming in itself works, and then he shows him something that's I don't even know how to describe it. It's Taborlin the Great. I mean, it's magic to the largest degree that Kavoth's ever seen or ever will see, other than his own abilities. Right? I mean, it's world changing. So I mean, it's tremendous. But I like just starting out, I like that Elodin teaches unlikely maths.
Yeah.
And his when and where. Time is the when is now, and the location is everywhere. Yeah. So good luck.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great that's a perfect description of Elodin. Like, just basically gives everybody a middle finger in the ledger when they look for what class he's teaching. It's unlikely maths.
Well, and then even
lessons everywhere.
I guess even if you consider the whole first part of the chapter could be looked at as a metaphor, as like an extended metaphor for naming, right? Because he's being elusive. He's not answering his questions directly. He's even walking away from him. He's giving him tasks that have nothing to do with what he's trying to do. So in a way, it's kind of like the whole thing is kind of an extended metaphor for what he eventually does in his class, right? Because he doesn't...
Yeah.
He demonstrates. He doesn't instruct, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's basically like, he gives them, okay, so there's plenty. He's basically, there's plenty math to be learned in the world. All you got to do is be looking for it and trying to figure it out on yourself. But he's basically like, go figure it out on yourself. Don't waste my time. Don't come to me for this shit. Go figure it out.
Well, then,
I mean, figure it out, too fucking bad.
Well, then he even goes as far as like offending him. He's like, "What's it going to take to get you to leave?" And then calls him Ravel. He insults the Ademaru, says they're unteachable. Like, and he just goes directly at him to try to get him to just like, dude, leave me alone, bro.
I like right before that too, when he first gets up to him and he says he'd like to learn under him. I was hoping to ask you a question or something like that. He's like, sad little hope, he said without breaking stride or looking in my direction. You should aim higher. A young man ought to be a fighter with high ambitions. I hope to study naming, I said, falling into step beside him. Too high, he said matter-of-factly. Try again. Somewhere in between. It's fucking great.
Yeah.
And then sends him to go find 3 pine cones when Kavoth goes looking for him. And he's looking for the exact right pine cones and comes back and Elodin's already walked off and just sent him on a stupid errand.
Literally a fool's errand.
With him.
Yeah. That's pretty great. Yeah, it's I mean, just the whole intro. So again, I mean, throughout the chapter, it really tells you who the guy is, right? And just the way he's written him, so interesting, because I keep when you picture him, I keep seeing him like with these very serious masters, sitting there during the admissions, and he's just like giggling, not really paying attention. He's kind of smiling. He's just fucking around. The dude's he seems to never be serious, yet he commands more respect from all the masters than anyone, and apparently fear. It seems there's like an underlying fear to when he speaks, when he gets involved, and he seems like he's kind of like a loaded gun. Like
he's dangerous. He's very powerful, and he's wild.
Well, and then especially
he's unpredictable.
And then when you take into account whatever happened that they don't speak of, whatever did happen, and the fact that, he seemingly is the most powerful person in some way, because it's hard to gauge power in their world, but one of the most powerful people at the university, they all know it, and then the guy loses his mind for a while. And then breaks out of the...
when you think about, he was chancellor, and then they had to lock him away, and they locked him in some room that they thought he couldn't get out of, and then he eventually got out of it. Yeah. Did something that all the masters tried to prevent him from being able to escape. They wanted to lock him away for who knows how long, maybe forever, and he eventually gained some magical power that they can't prevent, that they could not keep him locked away. And it seems like none of them would be able to get out of that bind. So you would assume they created a situation that they couldn't escape, but he did.
Yeah,
now,
that's really...
He can just go in there and fucking get out. Even when they change little things, he can get out immediately.
It's really interesting to consider because, in a way, it's like they can't control him. So it's like he kind of does what he wants, right? Because, well, they can't really control him. They try.
Yeah.
And, I especially like that little moment where, and we're getting ahead, but it's fine, where Kavoth is like, what would happen if I just left, shut the door?
Yeah.
Because he's like, would I be doing everyone a favor? Because, he put the sock there, right? Or something. He put something to keep the door open.
Yeah, he put his sock, wedged it in between in the door.
He's like, what if I just ran out and closed this thing and left him in here,
Turns out it wouldn't have stopped him at all. It took him looking at this wall for 30 seconds to be able to piece out what they changed and to be able to completely destroy it.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, so, because we learn through Kavoth how difficult it is to really be able to do these things like naming the wind and then have actual mastery over it and control over it. And he gets ever closer, right? But Elodin got out of this room and now he's second time around and he's able to do it. And it's not effortless, but it damn near. Right? And he's even chuckles to himself like, oh, you changed something. Okay.
Yeah.
And he still has to.
Cute. It's cute. It's cute what you guys did.
Yeah. But he does even have to actually use actual physical breaking of things to get out of it, but he still gets out of it.
Yeah. And then you get him going and agreeing to answer 3 questions for Kavoth. And the first one was, why don't you want to teach me? And I love what you were talking about where he just starts shitting on the Ademaru. Because the Ademaru make exceptionally poor students. They are fine for rote learning, but the study of naming requires a level of dedication that ravels such as yourself rarely possess. Then
I love it. Yeah, he immediately... Okay, go ahead.
He's like, I'm sorry that your experience with the Rue has left something to be desired, I said carefully. Let me assure you that, ye gods, a bootlicker too? You lack the requisite spine and testicular fortitude to study under me.
I love it, man. So, yeah, slanderize who he is as a person, basically, like, whatever, slanderize him in that way. And then whatever his response is, use that against him. And then you're not tall enough. Your eyes are too green. You have the wrong number of fingers. Come back when you're taller and you found a decent pair of eyes. It's like things that you have no control over.
Yeah.
It's fucking hilarious, man. Where it's just like, yeah, forget it, dude. Whatever reasons you need, that's the reason.
Yeah, it's fucking great. And then he's like, fine, I'll show you why. So he takes him to Haven, or the University Asylum, also called the Rookery or the Crockery. And you learn a little bit about how dangerous naming can be, or at least even maybe sympathy or just magic in general can be, because they have 320 to 350 patients, and they could hold 500 plus patients, and there's only about 1,500 students in the university, at the current time. So there's basically almost a quarter of the people that are at the university are fucking cracked. Now, obviously, there's people that are graduating that are leaving, so it's not, 20%, 15-20% are not going cracked, but a good number go cracked and probably stay cracked.
Yeah, well, and it does seem standard, right? This is normal. Like, they're used to this. This is a normal circumstance, and that was kind of already laid out when they talked about, multiple people cracking. And these are, again, you have to go through admissions to get in the university in the first place. So these aren't like, just random people that are cracking. These are very, very smart and able individuals. So, this is no joke.
Yeah, they're ready for it. They got a place that can hold a shit ton of them. I'm curious, like, how many recover and how long it's taken them to build up to 320, 350. Is it like, that's the standard number, and then for every one that goes cracked, another one recovers, and so it's just kind of maintaining at that level, or are these people, for the most part, just going cracked and staying cracked?
Yeah, that's a good question. It definitely brings that question into mind. But I guess we kind of don't really get resolution there. We know with Elodin, obviously, some people come back, but
he came back different. Or like Ari, she's cracked, but she's clearly got enough of herself together where she can survive in that state. She's just kind of different, but she's recovered enough. But it doesn't seem like when you go fucking, you lose your mind, that you're going to come back to being normal again. Like, you're not going to come back to who you were before you fucking lost your shit.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like you get a reset button.
No.
You're going to be a different version of yourself. It's interesting because I wonder if in Elodin's case, it seems like it's given him greater ability. He has a sense of humor about when he was cracked. He kind of jokes about it. I don't remember the exact line, but it's kind of like when he's in the room, he's like, good times. I used to stare out that window for, and he's just kind of like, he kind of makes light of it, which, that's endearing in terms of his character. It makes me like him further. But again, this chapter is huge on him and the way that I see him. Kind of we skipped over it's kind of small, but I just like these little traits where when they were heading there, while he's strolling along, he's picking up stones and tossing them into trees. He jumps to snatch leaves from low hanging branches. And like, I love these little touches. His master robe's billowing ridiculously. It's always, you always have these mentions of like, he looks ridiculous, like walking around in his master's robes. But I also like at one point he stopped and stood motionless and intent for nearly half an hour, staring at a fern swaying slowly in the wind. It's those types of things where like he sits on a bridge and just stares. It's those types of things where it feels like that's where the naming comes from.
It seems like his sleeping mind is more at the forefront than for most people. Like what he describes as a sleeping mind, it seems like the sleeping mind has a greater grasp of the steering wheel than for most people.
Well, and it feels like, it's almost like Neo with the Matrix, right? You see it when you're not. But but then it kind of brings to mind for me, like when he walks around looking ridiculous, it's almost like when Kavoth has the plumb bob. It's just, you don't have a recognition, or in Elodin's case, it just seems like he's not a guy of a shit what he looks like. No. He just doesn't care.
No,
and there's no reason to waste your time on it. And if you were wasting your time on it, then your sleeping mind's not awake anyway, because you're focusing on surface level bullshit that doesn't really matter. At least not in his case, right? For other people, it matters. Yeah. People walk around all day giving a shit what other people think about them.
No, he definitely doesn't. He does not care about that shit at all. He seems to be above it all. And it seems like that his sleeping mind, or however you would describe it, is running the show for him more than other people. He's more attuned to it. He's more aware of it than most people are. And that's him trying to teach both. Is obviously a large part of that, is trying to wake up that sleeping mind, make him more aware of it, make him more attuned to that side of things without also fucking destroying him.
That's one of the things that I've appreciated much more in this read through than I had in the past, at least more consciously appreciated, is what Elodin's trying to get Kavoth to do, and the little bits that Kavoth is starting to see, but really sees clearly when he's with the Adem. And when he's living with them and he's going through what they do, they're, like the little tests they do where it's like answer the question immediately, don't think about it. It's like when he starts to pick up what Elodin was giving him, and then he gets real mastery over the name of the wind and things. It's that delicate sort of that sleeping mind. It's that, I don't know. I still have trouble grasping how to describe it. I guess just calling it the sleeping mind is what you can call it, but it feels almost like like the Matrix, or just this quality
your subconscious.
But it's like the subconscious is in tune with this quality amongst things. It's your chi. I can't keep going to that because I don't know what else to call it. But I love it. It's a hard thing to nail down, to even explain. I'm having trouble even trying to give details from a book that's what he's doing overarching through the books.
Yeah, and I think that's why it works, is you don't want, if you try to explain it, you pin it down, and it's exactly like this, then you lose what makes it interesting. Well, and what makes it interesting is the fact that you can't really fucking pin it down. It's not exactly right. It's kind of like sympathy is very mechanical and there's that type of magic where it works because of XYZ. You have to do this, this, and this. Here's the measurements and all this. So that's why sympathy works. And then the naming is more like the Force. Before they brought in the midichlorians and all that, like that, when they brought in like midichlorians and all that kind of stuff, that didn't improve things. It made it worse. It worked better when it was this in between thing that you can't really exactly explain. You got to kind of feel it.
Well, that's
it's better that way.
And what Rothfuss, what he's doing that I think is so smart, is using like the wind. Is he using the leaves passing over the cobblestones? He's using, these subtleties that we're aware of that we can attribute to something that's not easy to understand, but then you can make connections to other planes of existence, I guess. I don't know. I like it. It's great, and yeah, it's very artfully done and intelligently done because he isn't trying to create something concrete. If you tried to create something concrete from it, defeats the purpose. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
It would shatter the whole framework.
Yeah.
But yeah, so speaking
it wouldn't work as well.
So speaking to Elodin again, what I was saying earlier about, I just love these parts because I picture him in this way throughout. Is he runs for a few steps, stops, he has his shoes on. Or no, he doesn't have his shoes on. He's just in socks, like gliding across a marble floor like a child, man. Like just running around. And again, his master robe's streaming out behind him, and he just keeps doing it. And he does it throughout, pages where he's like step, 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 slide. It's just, it's funny, man, because at the same time they're in a very, very serious place, and he's acting like a child.
I love that stuff because I still, even to this day, like if I'm at the grocery store when I'm going to my car, like I run with the cart and step on the back of it and glide all the way to my car. I still do that. I'm still like a little fucking kid in those moments, and Elodin's definitely like that. Also, too, before finish up on that point, we get a little nugget that when he talks to the girl at the desk or whatever, he's like, she tells him, "They're too wild today, sir. We think there's a storm coming in." She pulled a ledger book off the shelf. "The moon's getting full too. You know how it gets." So there's always these aspects of the moon being full or being completely gone that for people who are attuned to that sort of thing, it seems to have a major impact. Like Ari, obviously, major. She's either very scared of the moon, doesn't like to go out on top of things when there's a full moon. She tries to hide from it, or there's major aspects to the moon in this story. We don't exactly know what's going on, but it has a significant impact for people who are attuned to naming and shaping and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it seems to set off their psychosis or something. I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. But then as far as like him doing his little step slide, there's the great part where he's like, "You're trying to get me to answer questions you're not asking. Slide. It's not going to work. You're trying to trick me into," and Kavoth, "You're trying to trick me into asking questions. It seems only fair. Step, slide. So why the hell are you bothering with me anyway?" Elodin asks. "Kilvin likes you well enough. Why not hitch your star to his wagon? I think you know things I can't learn anywhere else." "Things like what?" "Things I've wanted to know since I first saw someone call the name of the wind." "The name of the wind, was it?" Elodin raised his eyebrows. Step. "That's tricky." And you get a little hint that the name of the wind is more difficult than learning the names of other things like stone and iron and that kind of thing. Like he talks about it later on, that learning the name of the wind was the traditional route, the first thing most people would go looking for, but also very difficult because it is ever changing. And he talks about another scene where Kavoth's like, asking him about how he's able to know the name of the wind. He's like, "I can see it, I can go anywhere and I can see it, but it's different in different places. But I know how to tip my mind to be able to see the name of the wind no matter where I'm at. But it's ever changing."
Yeah, that's I forget that many times. I kind of forget that, but yeah, I guess that's a big deal that he started with that, and it seems like that would make sense that if they would start with that, it would make it easier to accomplish other. I guess that's kind of similar with anything. Once you've learned the ability to go there with something, then others would seem more attainable, I would imagine.
Yeah, it seemed, and obviously Kavoth learns the name of many different things, because they talk about in the second book, like he had rings on both hands for the different things that he knew, like fire and wind and all these different things. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up on exactly what he learned the name of. but he had rings on both hands. And remember, like when Fella initially started to hold her hand out to put the ring on one of her fingers, he's like, no, not that hand. It's like, you're not anywhere near ready for that. Kvothe had rings on both hands. So he learns a very high degree of mastery of naming. Third book.
I don't remember that. Is that the end of book 2?
It's in book 2. It comes up in an interlude when he's trying to convince Aaron, I believe, not to join the army. And so he's like, he tells him, I'm Kvothe. And if you stay here, I'll tell you my story, and I'll tell you things you've never heard before. And Aaron's like,
he doesn't believe him.
He's like, can you show me your rings? I was like, you had, and then they list out, he had the rings on this hand and this hand, and so he's like asking him, can you show me your rings or your cloak of many colors and that kind of stuff. So it's in that chapter. It's in the second book. Obviously, when we get there, I'll have a bunch to say on that, but just kind of bringing it up here, like Kvothe, obviously he gets a very good mastery of naming, possibly shaping, that he doesn't have yet, but he's going to get there. That's our biggest clue, that he gets there.
So one of the interesting things that Rothfuss does in this chapter is to bring in this dude Timothy, because
what a douchey name.
I think it's important. I think it does its work. He's not important, obviously, but the utility of that character is important because Elodin's doing what he's doing. He's sliding around, whatever, he's talking, but then he immediately starts ordering people around, and they immediately do his bidding. So again, it kind of brings you back to where it's like, remember, this dude's like Chancellor, or was, right? So this guy, whatever he says, people do. I really found it interesting, and it took me in a different direction when he tries to open the door, and he's like, "You locked him in?" So just the idea that this guy's not supposed to be locked in. Again, I don't know the word for it, but so he's not committed. He's committed himself.
Well, it seems like if the other masters had their way, they probably would lock these people up, but Elodin was put in that situation where he was locked up, so he's got and he's especially against it. It seems like Elodin believes that he knows a better way to help these people than what, the people running the asylum think should be done. Seems like there's a disconnect between that.
Well, to me, what that does hint is that a lot of these people in there, they're there because they think this is the best thing for them, right? Yeah. Rather than just roaming around free, because they if they're cracked and they're not handling the pressures, then they're there for their own reasons as well as whatever initially got them there.
Yeah, and you get the sense that some of them probably are there against their will, and they got people strapped to beds.
Yeah.
There's the fear that Ari's clearly fearful of going to Haven, and Elodin is not bringing her there, even though he knows of her existence. He knows that Haven is right for some people and not for others, but it seems like other people would just, if you're insane, they would just lock you up, and so they wouldn't consider that there's better ways to handle the situation. They just prefer to kind of lock you up, put you out of their mind.
Yeah. Well, and the way it plays out with this Alder Wen is, it's pretty sad. Just hearing the guy like talk and how he was doing okay, but now he's just like, and it's just a dude in a room, man. Like, it doesn't, you can't see any forces around him, obviously. If you're just looking on a surface level, it's like, this is a guy in a room. I don't know what's going on with him, but he's like broken.
Yeah, terrified, like hiding on the floor, is not willing to leave that place. And he was a full-fledged arcanist. But it's not like just some fucking chump.
Well,
this is a guy that had already gone through the school.
Well, he
was Elodin's Giller.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, so he wasn't just, he was upper echelon. And now he's just, he's, we call it, he's a mess.
Yeah, and you would assume if he was Elodin's Giller, the assumption I have is that they probably went cracked around the same time. It's just Elodin has recovered where this guy hasn't. Because I'd be surprised if Elodin took on a Giller after he already fucking became cracked and then, you know, spent 2 years in Haven and then came out and then took on a Giller. It doesn't seem like he's on that path. It's possible. It could be that, but it seems like it would make more sense if they did something that fucked them both up. It's just Elodin was able to handle it better than this guy.
Yeah, I think that does seem to make more sense. I would assume. Yeah, that seems to make more sense. I was wondering about it's hard to tell with these guys what's real, what's not real. But when he asks him if he wants him to bring him anything, it's like, don't bring thunder. And he's being dead serious. But I do need a cat whistle and blue down and bones too. Tent bones. Elodin just says, I'll bring them. I'm wondering if that's all just figmented imagination stuff, or if like those are actual things that can solve a problem for this dude. You know what I mean? Could be. I mean, you never know with Rothfuss. I've not seen anything that would explain it in a way that I would understand, you know, why those things are significant. I don't think there's, unless I missed something. Well, I love that all three
I don't know what they would bring up.
Well, I love that all three are like not things. A cat whistle, blue down, there's eider down, there's goose down, but a color, blue down, and then tent bones. It's just, okay.
Yeah.
He's going to build a tent where he can get cats to come to him, and it's soft and blue, apparently. Like, that's all my mind's able to conjure out of that. But
I mean, it could be something, but you know, like with Ari, she seems to have an ability to look at things, find things, and know where they should go, what their proper place is, what their proper use is. So it could be that these guys, even in their cracked state, that they have some abilities and they're in touch with things that other people can't understand, where they're seeing things that other people can't see and can't quite grasp, but they have some kind of knowledge. If you could translate what they're trying to tell you, you could probably learn some valuable information. I'm sure that's the case with a lot of them, but I don't know just off those things if they are going to relate to the third book or how they would relate to anything we've read so far.
Well, what it does do is the same thing that, you know, we're with Kavoth here, and Kavoth's trying to figure out, like, you know, what kind of is going on, how different students can get to this state, and then we get the horrific, like the worst example of, like, if you were to lose your mind and then be in a constant state of they're in me, that whole, oh Jesus, dude, like that's one of the moments that every single time I read it, I hear the audible every time.
Yeah,
just like with what's his face, Trappist, because it's so, like, it's one of those things where the audible does definitely bring something to it, because to hear it the way that he's just screaming it in absolute anguished horror, and then just trying to imagine, like, that's this guy's day every day. He probably screams like this until he's so exhausted he can't anymore, passes out, then wakes back up, and then eventually gets back to this.
Yeah, Elodin actually, he does a great job of demonstrating why Kavoth's not ready. Because when he asks him, like, he's like, all right, tell me why. And he's like, you know, when knew what he was getting into when he became my Giller. He turned and began to walk down the hall. You don't know anything about the university, about the risk involved. You think this place is a fairyland. It's a playground. It's not. That's right, I snapped. It's a playground, and all of the children are jealous because I got to play, get whipped bloody, and banned from the archives, and they didn't. Elodin stopped walking and turned and looked at me. Fine, prove me wrong. Prove me that you thought this through. Why does a university with under 1,500 students need an asylum the size of the royal palace? My mind raced. Most students are from well-to-do families, I said. They've led easy lives when forced to. Wrong, Elodin said dismissively, turning to walk down the hall. It's because of what we study, because of the way we train our minds to move. So ciphering and grammar make people crazy? I said, taking care to phrase it as a statement. Elodin stopped walking and wrenched open the nearest door. Panic scream and burst in the hallway. In me! They're in me! They're in me! They're in me! Through the open door, I could see a young man thrashing against leather restraints that bound him to the bed at wrist, waist, neck, and ankle. Trigonometry and diagram logic don't do this, Elodin said, looking me in the eye. So you get that Kavoth's very naive, and you also get that what Elodin has trained his mind to do and what some of these guys are doing is extremely dangerous.
Yeah.
That you can just fucking snap and go insane where you have to be restrained by your wrist, waist, neck, and ankle.
Well, and it's...
like, I mean, they got that dude just strapped to a bed, can't move anything, just screaming, they're in me, over and over and over again.
Well, and it's one thing to have us see Alder win and what state he's in. And it's sad, and that would be a terrible place to be in. This is way worse. I mean, this is torture, and he's torturing himself. He thinks something's inside him, and he's just losing it. Oh man, that's it definitely takes the danger up a notch, or the potential for danger up a few notches to consider that.
Yeah. Like I can't think of much worse than being strapped to a bed where I can't move, I can't get up. Like, that would drive me crazy. But the fact that this guy has been driven so crazy that that's the only way to prevent him from doing
probably ripping his own skin off
to himself. Yeah, like probably doing some massive damage to himself. Like, it shows you like this shit's no joke. These people are not just, it's what they're doing is very dangerous. There's a lot of danger to it.
Well, and it's very effective what Rothfuss is doing here, because it's one of those things that I think most people rarely consider the possibility of losing one's mind, losing control of one's mind, and then trapping yourself in just endless thoughts of it's hard even to describe, of just you're being tortured by your own existence, and to be stuck in that as a continuation of. I mean, because again, you have to imagine this dude is literally probably screaming like that until his body can't take it anymore and he has to pass out.
Yeah, and does he ever recover? Like, I mean, like if
and what took
he doesn't
him?
recover? It's almost just like just put the dude out of his misery.
I mean, it brings up so many questions because so what got him there, and then what are all the things that could have got him there? I mean, I love stuff like that because there's so much to consider of what that could mean. And again,
you get a sense of it. You get a sense of it when he meets Florian, and his mind starts to go a little bit love crazy with her, and he has to cordon that part of his mind off just to kind of maintain his sanity. It shows you like a semblance of this, how you're driven insane, where like that part of his mind just went crazy.
Yeah,
writing love stories about her, and he just had to cordon that part of his mind off in order to stave off becoming insane.
Well, and to a great degree, I think seeing this probably had an influence there. And he knows the stories about people that meet Florian, they don't come back. They don't come back physically or mentally, they never come back. And he goes in there with a careful, measured, I mean, as soon as it starts to happen, he protects himself. And he doesn't allow himself to go fully. He allows a piece of his mind to go nuts and write love songs for her, but the rest of his mind, he is very guarded, and he's constantly keeping himself checked backward, which is really interesting because he willingly just says screw it and goes with no hesitation, but then as soon as he gets there, he's like, okay, I know what I got myself into here. Let me be careful. It's a really interesting dichotomy within him as a character in that sense. But that's what I was saying earlier. That's one of the things I like about him so much is he's very careful, he's very measured, and he's learned that he has to be that way. But then at the same time, he'll just say screw it and take big risks.
Yeah, he'll dream big.
which is pretty great.
For sure, he's not gonna back down. The part I love about this chapter is when they do get to Elodin's old cage, and there's a couple things about it. Like, one is the door is made entirely out of copper. The walls have copper interweaved in throughout, which seems like that's a new aspect. The windows have copper weaved throughout. So there's got to be, clearly, there's something about copper and the ability to naming that it hampers your ability to name, or you just can't name copper. There's something to do with copper naming. I don't know exactly what, but there's got to be. It's so prevalent that there's something different about copper.
It seems like what he's suggesting is that virtually no one has control over it, right? So whenever they utilize it, wherever it's used in locks, right? It's used on this door. Like you said, it's what he eventually has to break down with the part of the chair. So they apparently don't have control over copper for whatever reason. I love how he describes the air. Yeah, how the air is different. So I don't know what that means.
I think what they're trying to say there is, Elodin obviously knows the name of the wind, so they had to create something that would prevent him from being able to call the name of the wind in the room.
Yeah, but
I don't know, some kind of wards that prevented him from having access to the name of the wind and to having access to the wind. So, because he even talked about it, he's like, to be able to look out and see the wind, but not be able to feel it against your skin. So I think there's some kind of ward or some kind of magic that they put in the room where it's not actual air in that room.
Yeah.
It's something different.
I love the way he describes it. It's so great. It was almost like there was a pressure on my ears as if I were deep underwater, except of course that I wasn't. I waved a hand in front of me, almost expecting the air to feel different, thicker. It didn't. And then Elodin's pretty irritating, huh? And he's like, I'm surprised you noticed, actually. Not many do. Which is really, again, that's a big compliment to Kvothe, that he's perceptive to these things. But yeah, the way he describes it, it's really interesting because, well, I've never been in a space other than underwater. Of course, he has to take it there because where have any of us been where we're in a space where the air is different? It almost, the only thing I can kind of think of is when you're on an airplane or when you're driving and suddenly the pressure change. It's the only thing that I could kind of think of where it is kind of like, or almost like a deja vu type situation where you're just like, you're cognizant of the space right now and you don't know why, But yeah, that was really interesting. And it does take it to another level about how they're able to control the circumstances to prevent someone with powers such as Elodin from being able to control the area. And it's really fascinating.
To prevent, and shows you kind of, probably what aspect, if you know the name of the wind, what you could do with it. Because obviously their fear was that if he was able to call the name of the wind in that room, he would have been able to escape. So, maybe you could use it like a tornado to break down the wall or something like that. So clearly you can do some crazy shit with the name of the wind if you have access to it, to the point where they don't even want to have you, if you're trying to lock a namer in a room, you want to make sure he has no access to the name of the wind because he can use it to escape. It's a solid stone room.
So I'm getting way, way ahead, but I don't give a shit. Just imagine what Kvothe could do in battling the Chandrian with Elodin at his side. Fuck, man. Yeah. This dude's because when you considering what he does to the room, because I kind of forget, when they're on the rooftops and they're messing with Ari and all that stuff, I kind of forget that Elodin literally does some Taborlin the Great shit in this chapter. Like you just said, with that kind of control of the wind, and if you control all these matter in that way, and then we see what Kvothe does to that, the battalion or whatever that's around Cinder, and then just imagining what Elodin would be able to do. in a similar circumstance, I mean, they wipe out armies, man. Like,
but if going up against Chandrian specifically, he's going up against Haliax, who was able to name Cinder and just completely shut that dude down like it was nothing. Like, obviously, Elodin talks about like being able to name a person is much harder than naming the wind or naming stone or any of that kind of stuff. He's like, it's on a totally different level. And Haliax had complete mastery over Cinder with ease, to the point where it seems like he has mastery over all of their names, because everybody else just sat there like, oh, shit. Like, fucking, they all are clearly intimidated by him. So if he's got that kind of mastery, and he's been around thousands of years, you know, as between the creation war now has been 5,000 years. Who knows how long they were alive before that, but he's clearly been a master namer for thousands of years. So he's probably on a totally different playing field than Kavoth or Elodin at this point.
Well, and then considering the rest of the group, I like thinking about this Grey Dalsenti now, especially like when you consider what we talked about with Felurian, the idea that he can basically, from what you were using as a speculation, it seems like he can just send people into the rookery, right? I mean, that's the idea, right?
Yeah, it seems like he could possibly have a similar power to Felurian, where she's able to drive men mad with her sexual prowess and her just aura. It seems like he might have a similar ability in some respect by speaking or telepathically or something.
I wonder if there'll be more, if we'll get someone living now, examples of shaper, you know, people that are able to actually, like, to be able to see someone. I mean, what is a shaper? They're literally able to make things, like literally, you know.
We're definitely going to learn what shapers are. That's definitely going to be in the third book. Like, someone was talking to Rothfuss, asked a question, and it was with regard to shaping. He was like, you're going to love the third book.
Yeah.
So,
oh, cool.
Yeah, shaping is going to be definitely a part of it.
Yeah, I wonder if he's got, if one of the Chandrian got that power. Or if they all.
I think Kavoth gets that power. I think that's my guess on the difference between putting the ring on the left hand or the right hand. I think one of the hands is more shaping than just naming. One's for naming, one's for shaping. And so
talk about more than mastery. That's yeah.
It's on a different level and a different type of power. But yeah, I think we're going to learn what shaping is, and I think Kavoth is going to learn how to become a shaper, and I think that's probably necessary for him to be able to open either the 4-plate door or the lackless door, or both if they're separate. You know, I think shaping is going to play a huge role in the third book.
Looking forward to it. Is he working on this? Is he writing the third book? Or is this?
I don't think so.
I
think he's taken off the. He's been on sabbatical for the last 9 years, and he's going to get to it at some point.
He's just doing a lot of Oh, dude, you're going to love the third book. I'm going to throw that in there too. Yeah. All of this, anything that you can think of that's going to be really good, that's all in there. And the stuff you can't think of, that stuff's in there too.
He's probably waiting for a podcast like ours to come out so he can listen to it and hear about what our ideas are, like what we would like to see in the third book and what we think's going to happen. He's going to steal all those ideas, and then he's going to make the book. Like, I have no idea how to end this, so let's just wait until someone comes out with some really good ideas. Then I'm going to steal them.
Suddenly we start seeing all these Mario Brothers examples just start
popping in. It's all going to be Mario Brothers, Tonto, and fucking the Lone Ranger. I mean, obviously that's where it has to go, but it's going to be a little bit disappointing when we see we're right, because then we're always going to wonder, did he steal it from us? Because it has to go in that direction. There's just no other way. The story doesn't make sense without it.
Oh, my God.
I also like, though, when Elodin is like, watch this, and he picks up one of the chairs and just flings it against the wall, and just it shatters and doesn't do anything to the glass. And he's like, I used to do that for hours, Elodin said, drawing a deep breath and looking around the room fondly. Good times.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about earlier. It really sets the tone where it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't seem to. He just doesn't take many things seriously. And yeah, it's considering he's locked in this room for maybe 2 years, and battling it out in his mind, and he can just look back and laugh at it. It's pretty great. Speaks to his character, how enjoyable the character is.
Yeah, and then Kavoth asks his second question, which was, how did you get out? And so he tells him, goes through his little spiel about, you see, once upon a time, Elodin the Great found himself locked in a high tower. He had gestured around to the room around us. He had been stripped of his tools, his coin, key, and candle. Furthermore, his cell had no doors worth mentioning, no window that could be breached. He made dismissive gestures at each of these. Even the name of the wind was hidden from him by the clever machinations of his captors. That's where I was talking about, where that's, I think, what that part is talking about. And he got up from the couch, and then all around him was nothing but smooth, hard stone. It was a cell no man had ever escaped. But Elodin the Great knew the name of all things, and so all things were his to command. He faced the gray wall beside the windows. He said to the stone, break, and Elodin trailed off, his head tilting to one side curiously, his eyes narrowed. Sod me, they changed it. Huh. He stepped closer to the wall, lay a hand on it. He said, oh, that was half clever of them. And he took 2 steps from the wall. Sire Basalian. I saw the wall move. It rippled like a hanging rug thumped with a stick.
So great.
Then it simply fell. Like dark water poured from a bucket, tons of fine gray sand spilled across the floor in a sudden rush, burying Elodin's feet to his shins. So the description of that, it reminds me like of the scene where the helicopter crashes into the building in the Matrix, and you see the glass just kind of ripple out. Yeah. From the building, and then all after it ripples out, it just explodes. But it explodes in sand in this. Like that's kind of how I picture it. But it's great too, because right before that, when he's like, and I said break, and then Kavoth, nothing happened. So Kavoth is immediately thinking like, this guy's fucking crazy. What if I went and took this fucking sock out and just locked him in here, and then right after that, fucking Elodin figures it out and is like, Sire Basalian, and does that shit and just fucking blows his doors off.
Well, I love that he also goes as far as, to me it's really important that he also says, would the other masters thank me? So, because it does suggest like, is this like, this dude's nuts, but he's powerful. Is basically the entire, like, is the entire university basically kind of his captor in a way, like because they can't keep him, so it's like, so maybe I just walk out and everybody's like, all right, thanks. You're a hero.
Yeah, been trying to catch this dude forever. Finally did it for us.
No, but I love the way he wrote the wall move, rippled like a hanging rug thumped with a stick. I saw the same thing that you're talking about because of the way he wrote that, where you can just like envision that ripple. It's great. It's very effective.
Yeah, and you get more on the copper through the walls. He has to obviously break the copper. He doesn't name the copper. Yeah, he physically breaks it out with whatever, like debris from the chair he broke. And he talks about how he'd been locked in there for 2 years. And then Kavoth gets to his last question. What do I have to do to study naming under you? He met my eye calmly, appraising me. Jump, he said. Jump off this roof. That's when I realized all of this had been a test. Elodin had been taking my measure ever since we met. He had a grudging respect for my tenacity, and he had been surprised that I had noticed something odd about the air in his room. He was on the verge of accepting me as a student, but he needed more. Proof of my dedication, a demonstration, a leap of faith. As I stood there, a piece of story came to mind. So Tamerlane fell, but he did not despair, for he knew the name of the wind. And so the wind obeyed him. It cradled and caressed him. It bore him to the ground as gently as a pull of thistledown. It set him on his feet softly as a mother's kiss. Elodin knew the name of the wind. Still looking him in the eye, I stepped off the edge of the roof. Elodin's expression was marvelous. I had never seen a man so astonished. I spun slightly as I fell, so he stayed in my line of vision. I saw him raise one hand slightly as if making a belated attempt to grab hold of me. I felt weightless, like I was floating. Then I struck the ground, not gently, like a feather settling down, hard, like a brick hitting the cobblestone street. I landed on my back with my left arm beneath me. My vision went dark as the back of my head struck the ground and all the air was driven from my body. It's one of my favorite scenes in the book because I still remember like my first time for that part, because when he says jump and Kavoth is like, he was testing me. My initial reaction was like, yeah, he was.
Yeah.
And then Kavoth jumps and he just falls. Like, there's no catching him. Fucking Elodin just looks at him like, you idiot.
I love.
Why would you do that?
The when I read it now, that the whole paragraph of he was just testing me, it's just arrogance. The whole thing is just like self-righteous or like self-importance. It's his own arrogance, and then the fact that he holds his eye like he turns towards like you're such a jackass.
Yeah.
It makes him look even more like ridiculous.
Go ahead, call that name of the wind. Save me. It's like, dude, I can't do that.
Man,
like I ain't got that kind of power.
It's great.
It's like, I was joking. I'm not actually Elodin the Great. I'm just Elodin, you jackass.
Oh yeah, that was so good.
And then I love when he gets down at the end when he's like, he looked down at me. Congratulations. That was the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Ever.
Yeah, it's I think of the first read through, I was just I was just very taken aback, like what? Like what just happened? I was kind of lost a little bit where I'm like, hold on, I don't get it. It took me like a minute to like, oh, okay. So the whole time he was telling him the truth. Like, this is not, none of this is a test. This is what's at stake in this shit. And, although he shouldn't have told him to jump off the roof.
No. But you don't think you would think like the guy wouldn't just jump, like he would say something first, like ask like, I'll kill myself. Like, why would I jump? Like, are you going to catch me? Like, how, like you would ask some questions. Like, I would have many questions before I'd be willing to jump. Like, all right, so this is kind of like a leap of faith. I'm going to jump and then you're going to fucking call the name of the wind and cradle me to the ground. Is that what's going on? Like, I'm not just jumping.
It's gotta, so putting yourself in Elodin's shoes for the rest, of the book, Kavoth ends up in his...
Should be like, God damn, I better be careful what I tell this kid to do.
So like I was going to say, when he's teaching him in the class, like they have that background where it's like, I saw this dude just literally do this because I said do it.
Yeah. Definitely do not tell him to cut off his hand or something. Yeah. Cut your hand off. This guy will do it. Fucking jackass.
Well, he does tell him, stop grabbing my tits. And that was very effective.
Yeah.
He didn't grab his tits anymore.
But you get another one of those where Rothfuss is great at the deadpan humor.
Yeah.
Like after that, he looked down at me, congratulations, he said. That was the stupidest thing I'd ever seen. His expression was a mix of awe and disbelief, ever. And then there's a pause, and then and that is when I decided to pursue the noble art of artifice.
Yeah, I made that same note of the great dry humor is very similar. It reminds me very similar to when he walked into the bar with Scarpy, where he just immediately he goes to the next thing where it's like, this helped me make my decision. Yeah, it's pretty great.
Yeah,
and then
the last part was, nevertheless, I wasn't terribly put out by Elodin's refusal, storybook magic or no. I was not eager to study under a man whose first set of lessons had left me with 3 broken ribs, a mild concussion, and a dislocated shoulder.
Pretty great. I mean, that's the introduction to Elodin, and then have maybe I can get this guy to teach me. He ends up getting thrown off a building, and then what everybody thinks happened, that he pissed him off so much that he threw him off the top of a building, which is just again adding to his. Talk about what a way to add to your reputation. Jump off of a fucking building with one of the masters next to you who has, the background that he has. That's so interesting.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. Rothfuss is the reason these books are so awesome. There's not these massive like holy shit moments where like something just shocking and unexpected takes place. There's never moments where like my jaw drops to the floor that he surprised the shit out of me and he took it in a totally different direction. But every fucking chapter is just phenomenal. Yeah. Like when I go back to them, I'm like, oh, this chapter's great. Oh, this one's great. Oh, this one's great. It's over and over again. They're all fucking great. And it's not because like he set me up and shocked me. It's just, man, he's such a great writer. Yeah. He writes conversations, personalities, every aspect of it. He's just so good at it.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive to go through it multiple times and still be like picking up new things, and then also just not necessarily always new, but oh yeah, he kind of did it in this nuanced way. It's very it's very thoughtfully done. The things that he's got, and he's building everything up. And I like pointing those things out, and I like the additional read throughs as well to see those little pepperings of. I don't even remember what I mentioned in that last chapter or 2 chapters ago, but like those little, just small little bridges to where we're going to get to. Yeah, it's great.
All right, the next chapter is chapter 47. It's titled Barbs, and we learn about some of the different things he learns in his first semester at the university and his budding antagonism with Ambrose and his nurturing of his reputation. So I love, even though this is a short chapter, I like this a lot. Because of some of the things it talks about. Like, you learn like what he studied. I studied Medica and learning about the different parts of the body and how to heal things. He learned Ciaru. He got further in the ranks in artificery. And he was doing a lot of his work at the Kilvin's workshop.
Yeah, it's a nice little summary. And then it touches on what I mentioned a moment ago about Kilvin's mind. Every span, Kilvin gave me a copper jot, sometimes 2. I suspected there was a great tally board in that methodical mind of his, carefully marking down the hours of each person worked. So it kind of, and he continuously does that in further chapters, but I just thought I'd touch on it since we just talked about that. But yeah, I mean, it's a really short chapter, but there is quite a bit contained. He becomes tighter friends with Willem and Sim. He had others, but none so close as them, and then the line that we've talked about so many times about Ambrose, where, he kind of touches on essentially what he knows how he should act, yet he just refuses to. I believe that's contained in this chapter, right?
Well, I like the way he describes it. He goes, and there was Ambrose. To deem us simply enemies is to lose the true flavor of our relationship. It was more like the two of us entered into a business partnership in order to more efficiently pursue our mutual interest of hating each other. It's such a great way to describe their relationship.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So anyone with a lick of common sense knew how to deal with arrogant nobility. The tailor I had terrorized back in Tarbine knew what to do. You take your lumps, duck your head, and get the whole thing over as quickly as possible. But I always fought back, and while Ambrose was intelligent and reasonably well-spoken, he was no match for my trooper's tongue. I had been raised on the stage, and my sharp-roo wits ensured that I got the better of our exchanges. But yeah, and then they continues to point out that the whole thing barbs. He would snap at me and leave with a face full of barbs. And each time we parted ways, we hated each other just a little bit more.
Yeah, it's like people notice, and by the end of the term, I had a reputation for reckless bravery, but the truth is I was merely fearless. There's a difference, you see. In Tarbine, I learned real fear. I feared hunger, pneumonia, guards with hobnail boots, older boys with bottle glass knives. Confronting Ambrose required no real bravery on my part. I simply couldn't muster any real fear of him. I saw him as a puffed-up clown. I thought he was harmless. I was a fool.
Yeah, it is. That's a pretty great way to put it, because he's not playing a role as like the brave hero. He's like, fuck this guy. Yeah, I get why everybody's scared of him. But fuck this guy. Like, I had real things to be scared of in the past where I could lose my fucking life. Again, he's a fool because he's not paying attention to the fact that he's layering in what could get him killed. But again, though, I mean, you can't help but really appreciate that to a huge degree. It's interesting though, because the way Fitz has described it, where he reads it and he's like, "Come on, man, just let it go, let it go." Like, I almost feel like he's like his dad or something. But for me, when I read it, dude, man, do it, get in there. I can't help it, man.
And Fitz is right.
Yeah, he's right. Yeah.
The smart thing would be to not do those things, but it would be less entertaining to read, and there's obviously going to be hell to pay doing. That's why he's saying I was a fool.
Yeah,
is there's going to be hell to pay for snapping at Ambrose, but man, it just would not be. It would not be as entertaining if he wasn't fucking smacking this fucking little prick around.
Yeah, it's good stuff, man, and it's what it's a huge part of what again endears you to Kvothe. And again, it's the flawed hero. It's he knows better. He just can't help himself, or refuses to help himself, I guess.
Yeah, the only other part of that chapter was him and Basil concocting his reputation. He would tell Basil what to say, and Basil would go and spread the rumors. And he's like, reputation is a sword of armor or a weapon you can brandish if need be. I decided that if I was going to be an Arcanist, I might as well be a well-known Arcanist. So I let slip a few pieces of information. I had been admitted without a letter of recommendations. The master had given me 3 talents to attend rather than make me pay a tuition. I had survived for years on the streets of Tarby and living off my wits. I even started a few rumors that were pure nonsense, lies so outrageous that people would repeat them despite the fact that they were obviously untrue. I had demon blood in me. I could see in the dark. I only slept an hour each night. When the moon was full, I would talk in my sleep, speaking a strange language no one could understand.
Yeah, I dig it. These little, again, he's a Maru. He understands stories, and then it's also, pepper some things that just simply aren't believable just to make it interesting.
And, the things that they've seen him do is why these stories can hold up at all.
Yeah.
Is because they've seen him get whipped and not bleed, and things that shouldn't be possible. I mean, his skin split apart, but he didn't bleed. And so, they've seen these things that just don't make any sense. He's able to light the master's foot on fire when he shouldn't be able to pull that kind of heat. And so they see these things that shouldn't be able to happen. And then that puts enough doubt in their mind when they hear, he's got demon blood. Like, well, maybe he does have demon blood.
Maybe that, Yeah, I mean, the unbelievable leads to what could be make other unbelievable things credible, or somewhat.
And it leads to fucking old Cobb telling stories about Kvothe that make no fucking sense whatsoever. Is you see the effects of telling these nonsense stories mixed in with truth. It leads to these fanciful fucking acts of whatever it is,
heroism,
these heroic tales and all that kind of shit. But the truth of the matter is less so than these fanciful stories that they come up with.
And it always goes back to what he and his father talked about, which was, you got to bend the truth to make it believable. You got to pepper in some lies here and there to make it seem more true, or to make it seem true in itself.
It's pretty great too when Elodin steps in. I love the description of it when he's like, he looked at me, his dark eyes steadied me somewhat, slowed the storm inside me. Airless Veti, he said. Say it. What? Simmons said somewhere in the distant background. Wind? Airless Veti, Elodin repeated patiently, his dark eyes intent upon my face. Airless Veti, I said numbly. Elodin closed his eyes briefly, peacefully, as if he were trying to catch a faint strain of music wafting gently on a breeze. Unable to see his eyes, I began to drift. I looked back down toward the broken lute in my hands, but before my gaze wounded too far, he caught my chin again, tilting my face up. His eyes caught mine. The numbness faded, but the storm still turned inside my head. Then Elodin's eyes changed. He stopped looking toward me and looked into me. This is the only way I can describe it. He looked deep into me, not into my eyes, but through my eyes. His gaze went into me and set solidly in my chest, as if he had both hands inside me, feeling the shape of my lungs, the movement of my heart, the heat of my anger, the pattern of the storm that thundered inside me. He leaned forward and his lips brushed my ear. I felt his breath. He spoke, and a storm stilled. I found a place to land.
So do you think he spoke Kavoth's true name?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what he said there. Probably like Jack in the Box.
That's what I thought.
Like number 6.
I did think it was kind of interesting, the Airless Veti thing, and Simon, saying, "Oh, wind?" Like, so it's some language that Simon knows.
No. That he said Airless Veti is the actual name of wind. But this is like when...
Oh, yeah. So he hears wind.
He hears the calling name, but Elodin said the real name.
Hears...
Yeah.
But Kavoth hears Airless Veti.
Yes.
Interesting, yeah.
So, yeah, that's another call to, like, when... That's like when Elodin said... Or, no, it was the master... Uxadal, when Uxadal called the name of fire. And Kavoth's like, the name of fire is fire? And he's like, that's not actually what I said, but the fact that you heard fire is probably a good sign. So that's a good sign for Sem, that he heard wind.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so he fucking settles him down. Then I also like the description when he's like, when you're spinning around as a little kid, it's like then you stop and the world lurches into regular shape. The dizziness strikes you like a thunderclap. Everything lurches, moves. The world tilts around you. That is what happened when Elodin stilled the storm in my head. Suddenly, violently dizzy, I cried out and raised my hands to keep myself from falling sideways, falling upward, falling inward. I felt arms catch me as my feet tangled in the stool and I began to topple to the floor. It was terrifying, but it faded. By the time I recovered, Elodin was gone. And I love that Elodin fucking comes in, fucking does his thing, saves him, and then fucking dips out. It's like, all right, peace.
I do like that description a lot because he doesn't just describe, when you're a kid and you spin around. It's you spin around and it causes dizziness and the world's spinning around you, or you're spinning around and then you continue. And then it stops that you're spinning. It's the world that's spinning around you. And then you stop and it all lurches back together. And it's hugely disorienting. It's so great, man, because like that writing literally put me in that.
Yeah.
And it made me picture that. And I couldn't tell you the last time I did something like that. I mean, it's been decades,
Yeah.
But it was really interesting to go there because it takes you there because at some point in your life you did it. And then you think about it and you're there with him, but you're also with the imagery of, stilling the storm in his head, suddenly violently dizzy, his arms flailing out and all that type of stuff. It's it's almost like kind of sickening to picture. It's extraordinarily effective and it's very intense.
Relaying this to it being the name of the book, and also just the amount of weight that Kavoth places on this instance, from start to finish, the moment that he says, the name of the wind and the effect that it has on Ambrose and the people around him, and also the effect that it has on Kavoth. From the moment that it happens, I mean, right when it happens, all we know is, he's pissed off. It's a great description of how mad he is. But then, like that, we get silence where Kavoth is not there anymore, and he's mute, and he's somewhat blank to the world. And then as Elodin brings him back into reality, or takes him out of that state, the disarray that it sends Kavoth into to be pulled out of that state abruptly, it makes me wonder, just what's happened. Not just, yes, Kavoth is called the wind, controlled the wind, but there's something way bigger that's going on. It's somehow his shook not only Kavoth out of his own body reality, but also the world around him, and everybody else too. The people who have seen it happen, and only someone who's a wizard brings him can steady things, and that does. And then Kavoth goes and sleeps for 18 hours straight.
Well, it seems like the type of thing that if Elodin doesn't show up, he ends up in the rookery.
Yeah.
Well,
absolutely.
And I like the description Willem gives. It's great. I mean, it's great for us to be able to picture. He looks at you, but nothing is there. His eyes are like a dog's eyes. I mean, actually remind me of the way they describe Sid Barrett. His eyes are like clouds in the sky, or however that is. But yeah, I mean, just that sense. It's like that's a dude in a catatonic state that ends up in an insane asylum, and he's just staring at a wall.
And it's interesting too, because like none of the other masters, like when Kavoth brings up the sleeping mind to Elxadal, when Elxadal calls the name of fire for him, Kavoth brings up the name of the wind. I mean, the sleeping mind to Elxadal, and Elxadal is like, "What?" And he has to explain to him, and he's like, "Oh, yeah, whatever." And it shows you like Elodin's the only one that really has a grasp of what is going on, to the point where he has a way to kind of differentiate the two different mindsets.
Yeah.
Like your instinctual side versus your waking mind side, when your rational thought, your thought process normal, but the animal instinct side of you is a totally different thing, and it's obviously way more powerful in their world than our world. My animal instinct's pretty powerful, but I mean it's very powerful in their world.
That's really interesting, that how there's a differentiation there. I hadn't thought about that. So Elxadal's capable of still getting to places near to. Now we know he's nowhere close to Elodin because he doesn't know nearly as many names of things, but he's able to get there, even not getting there the way that Elodin does.
Correct.
Elodin's teaching Kavoth the old school, it seems like, or at least his version of it. And I mean, that's kind of how the world works for any of us, right? We're all doing the best we can. We can read Plato and Aristotle and all these different people and try to form, a way to understand the world and psychology and culture and all those things. But we're all still doing it on our own. It's how it can be communicated in our own minds that we can wrap our minds around of what this is.
Yeah, and it's similar to, like, I mean, you can learn a subject and you can understand it yourself. And so you can think through the process, you can understand what you're reading, but then if you tried to have to teach it to someone, you have to know it on a different level to be able to teach a subject. Even if you understand it when you're reading it, all of it makes sense, it's all clicking, but then when someone asks you to explain it, then you can see that gap of where the limit to your knowledge really is. It's like being able to teach something is much different than understanding something. And so that's kind of their knowledge, their ability to speak names is very surface level. They can speak them, they know what they're doing as far as that goes, but explaining it to someone, they can't even begin to explain it.
What's so interesting about that also, and that's why the stop grabbing my tits thing is so great, because it quantifies the challenge of trying to learn it.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's so difficult to explain how it works, and the routes that Elodin takes seem completely absurd to someone who's even trying. Right? Kavoth's a hard nut to crack in that sense, though, because he wants it clear, he wants it explained. You can explain everything. Well, we'll get to that in a minute, but it's so great because we get the challenge with being there as Kavoth, and you sort of, in a way, especially on additional read-throughs, you realize Kavoth dude, stop trying so hard. Like, allow like the understanding to come to you, and that's what Elodin's trying to do. But it's very much like it's Rothfuss does a lot of interesting things here because he's playing on a philosophical type of plane with that difference of being able to understand how this works. And this leads in perfectly to what we're talking about. Leads in perfectly to the next chapter, in which case we're getting all this laid out in front of us through Elodin's explanations. And it's also interesting that he's tried to a certain degree to give this to Kavoth before, but it is one of those great circumstances where even if someone explains it to you, unless you're ready to receive it, it's not going to matter, right? And we get that here as well. And again, that speaks to understanding philosophy or trying to understand philosophical notions. Unless you're ready to take it in, unless you've gotten those building blocks to get there, it's not going to communicate to you. It could be ready to absorb it.
Yeah, and the big difference between Elodin and all the other masters, or at least all the other people who know the names of things, Elk Sadal has an understanding, a great understanding, a thorough understanding of fire, and so he knows the name of it. And whereas Elodin, he understands the nature of naming, and so all the things, it's like, I don't know how to put it into words better than that it's an understanding of one small aspect of the subject or the subject itself on a whole level that Elodin gets.
Yeah, and that's the
it's
difficulty,
the connected tissue of things.
Yeah, and the difficulty in teaching that is you're not teaching a subject that your rational, well thought out mind it's not even capable of doing this. So you have to teach the animal instinct mind. So it's not even teaching it. It's working out. It's like learning the muscle memory of how to throw punches and stuff. It's not just enough to be like, okay, you throw a right hook, and the way you throw a right hook is you turn your arm this way. Like, that's not gonna. You could tell someone how to throw a right hook, but the only way to be good at throwing a right hook is to get that muscle memory and to fucking throw fucking right hooks and get that coordination, that muscle memory. So he's trying to get their unconscious mind to learn something, and their conscious mind gets in the way of the teaching process. So it's makes it extremely difficult. If you were trying to teach something and you only are trying to reach the unconscious mind, it'd be very difficult.
It's kind of like like with the Matrix. When Neo goes into the Matrix, he's learning how the world works and what the rules are and the parameters, and he's doing kung fu and all that. But then he ends up understanding the Matrix itself.
Yeah.
So that's how he can break the rules. That's your Morpheus's line of, "You're faster than this. Don't think you are, know you are." So it's kind of that inner dilemma that you then broaden things out.
Oh,
and that's where
he stole the
Elodin
Matrix too. Or he homaged the Matrix.
Yeah.
This fucking dude. Every fucking
when did he write
movie.
This? Are you sure? When did he write it? No, he'll probably claim he's never seen The Matrix, just like he's never read Game of Thrones.
Matrix came out way before.
Uh-huh.
But no, he's never seen any movies.
Yeah.
He's never read any books either.
Yeah. Never. I didn't.
All those homages? No. I don't know what an homage is. What's an homage?
I thought
Jack in the Box.
I thought I was the first person to write a book. I thought I invented the subject.
The medium itself.
Yeah.
He invented that as well. No, it's great, man. I like the. I hadn't thought about that quite as much. I mean, you see it much more clearly, I think, with Kilvin, because he's so engineering, mathematical sort of application. But the way that Elodin looks at it, and Elodin's above and beyond all these guys. And he's younger than all of them. So it seems like, he's also, I don't know if there's a bloodline thing going on with him as well. Well, obviously we don't really know, but we know he was 14 when he's blowing their nips off. So, and the fact that he's able to accomplish all those things basically at a younger age than Kavoth, I mean, it's great. It's my favorite character, man. it's such a great delivery mechanism. He represents such a great delivery mechanisms for some of the most interesting dynamics that play out in the books.
Elodin blew their nips off, and Kavoth fucking got them to all shit their pants.
Domino effect, baby. One leads to the other.
What if instead of him having a hot foot, it was a poop pants?
That's gonna be Rothfuss is gonna write in a scene in the next book, and Kavoth's gonna be like, hey, what up, nipple blast? And he's like, hey, and Elodin will shoot back like, hey, what's up, shit pants? It's gonna be. I love. That's how he's gonna tie it in. Give us a little wink.
I love picturing him now instead of like the hot foot thing where his face gets all red. Instead, he has to like quench his butt cheeks together and he puts his hand by it. Yeah. He runs up to the front of the room,
waddles off the stage.
Oh man, that's a funny image. Oh man.
And then when he's on the horns, he's like, guys, he made me poop myself.
It's like hot lava.
It's malfeasance.
I still have scars.
It's not funny. My butthole, it felt like hot lava. Like it's fucking burnt. It's literally burnt.
He has to sit. So, like when he comes in, he has to bring one of those circular
little donuts.
Yeah, you got to sit on. Actually, Brandur has to like carry it and blow it up for him.
Elodin and the other guys are chuckling as he comes in. He's like, "It's not funny, guys. My butthole hurts."
Yeah, whatever.
Lava
ass.
So good.
I need this.
That just becomes somebody getting hemmed up. Just means they got pooped. They pooped their pants. Oh, you got hemmed again? Haha.
What up, lava shit?
I'll be back, guys. I'm all hemmed up.
And what's so great about it is at the beginning you're like, oh shit, he's fucked. He lost everything. Yeah. And it's the opposite.
He gets 20 talents and a promotion.
Hey, speaking of that, did two quick questions. Did Kavoth get the entire 20 talents or just the 8 just the 10 and 6? And how much did Kavoth originally pay for that?
He got both. He got the 9 and 6 plus the 10 and 6. So he got 20 talents.
That's a good question. I can't remember how much he paid for it.
Oh, like when he originally, I think he paid like 2 or 3 talents.
Yeah. I remember he kind of got over on the guy because the guy didn't know anything about the instrument.
He ends up paying quite a bit for the next loot he gets, which will be in book 2. But he ends up paying a good penny because he's penny poor again very quickly. Like in the second book, it starts off with him being fucking broke again. So
yeah, but he gets like I'm pretty sure he gets like a Les Paul in the next one, right?
He gets a what?
A Les Paul?
I don't know what the fuck a Les Paul
is. Is that like a Stradivarius?
It's a very expensive guitar.
Fucking
he gets an Ilian Stradivarius. Fucking nerd, because I know what a Les Paul guitar is?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Fucking loser.
Any reference that Dan doesn't know, it's just like, you suck. Fuck you.
You're a dork.
Fucking nerd. Fucking loser. You talk about something I know.
Something you do know, coming up here is absolutely fucking tremendous. We get so much world building, what we just talked about in terms of the psychological aspects of the sleeping mind and how all this works from Elodin. This walk with Elodin's tremendous. And I was gonna say, dude, like this chapter, the next chapter, do a fucking tremendous job of leading into book 2, of leading into the next book, because we get, these two other like planes of reality that hadn't really necessarily occurred to us or haven't really been fleshed out yet. And he does it. It's fantastic. And the fact that he does it towards the end of the book, it puts these seeds in your mind of like, okay, so where's this going to go? And you get it towards the end of the book, and it's fucking great, dude. So it's like this is, fresh in your mind about, all right, so now I want to read about this,
Well, it's great too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you get a couple big things. You get like, do you know what Relar means? Translates as speaker. Do you know what it means? Not really. And he tells him, once upon a time there was a university. It was built in the dead ruins of an older university. It wasn't very big, perhaps 50 people in all. But that part I think is noteworthy because he says it was built in the dead ruins of an older university. So I think he could be referring to like the Under thing and that they started a university there and then it just like they built a much bigger university on top of that university later on. But I think, he's likely referring to the Under thing when he's talking about like once upon a time there was a university. It was built in the dead ruins of an older university.
I love the analogy that he uses is so great. In those days, the Arcanum was a strong brandy. Now it is well-watered wine.
Yeah.
And it's just that reference to the men who, so basically it was very small. It was a small group, which is a private group of arcanists inside the university. So you have the university. It sounds like it was small to begin with, but then you have a smaller sector or smaller group of individuals who were at the university who knew the names of things and the shape of things, the shape of the world, whatever, or however he puts it, in real magic. And I love that idea of, they were this much more powerful, in which case the Arcanum was a strong brandy, as to now it's well-watered wine, where you have, even masters don't have a real grasp on, 5 different elements, right? They might know the name of fire or the name of, a couple of things, the name of iron, but not of everything. And It sounds like these guys kind of had a mastery of most everything.
Or at least that's what they were gunning for. Like you get the very clear sense that Elodin looks at what they currently do at the university as fucking piddly shit. That they're wasting it, they're just like, like you would think like if he was really had his druthers, like all this fucking book learning shit and like the mathematics and all that kind of stuff, he'd be like, go learn that on your own. Go to a school somewhere else. This is where we learn fucking magic. And that's what we're doing here. We're learning magic. And so like
and it also seems deeper than that. Like not just the piddly magic that Sigildry and the different things he's been learning so far, but this naming is a much deeper and more pronounced magic.
Yeah.
Something more powerful.
Yeah, it's what he even says. He's like, they taught a few students slowly, carefully encouraging them towards power and wisdom in magic, real magic. Same way Kavoth describes, like when he's like calling the name of Wynn, he's like, that's real magic. Like, I mean, to me, it's all magic, but, to like Elodin and Kavoth, they're like, no, fuck calling names, that's fucking the real magic. So.
Well, everything else is explained in a scientific way.
Yeah.
All the other lighter magics, but the naming there's no explanation for it, at least not in words, as Elodin kind of alludes to at this point.
Yeah.
I like the example that he gives. It kind of helped me to understand a little bit bigger, how he leads people into this, how Elodin can lead Kavoth into understanding its larger, in terms of trying to understand the names of things, because he calls this boy Nathan. Nathan comes, he gives him his robe, says, take that somewhere. And then, do you see, the names we call each other are not names, but they have some power nonetheless. And then Kavoth's like, that's not magic. He had to listen to you. You're a master. And you're a Relar. You called the wind, and the wind listened. And I just like the idea of that is, kind of what he's gunning for is we all have this power within us. It's just a matter of understanding that it's accessible. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and he uses the analogy of like that kid has to listen to me because I'm the master, and he's like, yeah, you're the master of the fucking name of wind. The wind has to listen to you because you're the master of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
like stop kind of cock blocking yourself, basically.
Yeah.
You know, like you're putting a ceiling above yourself that doesn't need to be there.
I do want to mention, because every time this has come up, there's numerous times where I've wanted to bring this up, and I forget every time, so I want to make sure I do this time. Elodin has every time Elodin interacts with a student, like in this kind of manner, where he's like, you know, hey, Nathan, come here. Or like he calls like a kid, like when he's teaching the class on naming, he has some young kid come into class and like catch a ball, when he has them like do the, like, all right, I'm going to throw a ball and like do all the mathematical fucking calculations to see where the ball's going to land. And they're all doing those mathematical calculations. And then he's like, okay, you guys got everything? And he's like, all right. And he calls some kid in and he's like, all right, here, stand here. And then he throws him the ball and the kid catches it. And he's like, see? It's like, you guys, all those calculations you guys were doing, you couldn't come up with where that ball was going to land. But with him, I just threw it to him and he immediately knew where it was going to land and caught it. And so, but he calls that kid's name. Like when he's in the rookery and he's talking to those people, he fucking calls their name. When he's walking to the rookery, he mentions a student's name that he's walking. He seems to know everybody. And you're talking about the teacher who doesn't really teach any classes. He fucking sleeping through admissions. Like, this is the guy that should be the last person to know who every single person is. He's not that kind of fucking teacher. He doesn't have a relationship with everybody. I think this is Rothfuss subtly showing us how powerful Elodin is, and how, like, this is also, like, he's able to know Kavoth does events in Kavoth's life, like when he talks about the spades, when Kavoth messes up in a card game with Sim and Will and Manette, and Elodin relays that to him later on, or when he's like spit for luck or the 7 words. Like, Elodin seems to know things at a different level. He knows everybody's names. He knows what Kavoth has done in his life. Like, he knows things on a deeper level, and I think this is just another hint at how fucking in tune Elodin is with his naming.
Yeah, I picked up on that, at least just right now. Not right now, but when I was reading this chapter and he called that kid, and compared it to Kavoth knowing the name of the wind, I did pick up on that he's like, he's basically saying, I know this kid's name not because I've met the kid. I know it like you know the name of the wind. Yeah, I think that goes much deeper. He probably knows everybody's name.
Well, and I love how that proceeds, because then he says, Kavoth is like, well, I decided to take a different tack. How did I call the wind if I didn't know how? And Elodin's like, that is an excellent question. That's one of those moments that kind of gets you to like mentally sit up in your seat. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it kind of got me like, oh, this is going to be good. And then he goes into the 2 minds. And
it's also the first time we see like Elodin like enthusiastic about being a teacher.
Yeah.
Like, this is like, all the rest of the time it's like, get away from me, leave me alone. He's like, but then when he's talking about the name of the wind, and he's like got someone who's called the name of the wind, and now he gets to talk to someone who's shown power, the kind of power that he's interested in. Then he's like, finally, I got a student that's worth my time, worth my fucking, worth all the, I'm a fucking bad motherfucker, and like these kids are fucking wasting my time, but this kid showed something, and so you see why he's a teacher. He is enthusiastic about it, but he doesn't care about all the other bullshit. This is what he's into.
I think that's definitely a good point. I think that's a big part of why he's so bored all the time. He's just kind of like, because he doesn't have something to rise to the occasion. He doesn't have someone to teach, it seems.
He's like, get on my fucking level, motherfuckers.
Well, it seems like I guess the last person that is stuck in a fucking cell.
Yeah.
Losing his mind. Like, they're in me type shit, unfortunately.
And I'm sure there's probably other people. It's just he's now, after fucking that student going crack probably made him a little gun shy too, because he
Yeah,
starts
I imagine,
teaching
yeah.
again after Kavoth fucking gets him all revved up, and then he starts fucking teaching naming again.
Isn't there a mention that naming that Elodin hasn't taught a class in a long time, and I wonder, if there's been, I don't know that you can answer this, but like that guy that's in the crookery and cracked, was that guy on Kavoth's level? Was he on Elodin's level?
No, he was an arcanist.
Kavoth,
he was a giller, so he was someone that had gone all the way through the school and got his gilder. So he was a giller. He was an arcanist. He was like, just below a master. Like he'd already gone through the school, but now he's like a graduate student teacher.
I meant on the level of Kavoth, in that Kavoth hasn't been taught anything and can name.
Yeah, we can't.
Is this guy? Yeah, no.
It doesn't say like what is but like if you're a fucking giller, you're fucking powerful. Period.
My curiosity is not about the guy that's cracked. My curiosity is Kavoth on another level?
Obviously, yeah.
Is he striking Elodin's interest because he's a namer to the nth degree that Elodin hasn't seen since himself?
Possibly. I mean,
like
yeah. I mean, he's clearly us. It's clear. I mean, Elodin doesn't say it, but I'm sure everybody realizes Kavoth's a bad motherfucker.
Well, there was also a Kavoth named Dari.
Yeah,
and Elodin witnessed that. There were a couple instances where he witnessed Kavoth's abilities in a couple of different ways.
Yeah, he sees him at the House of the Wind, staring at the wind and shit like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and he jumped off the building when Elodin told him to. So he's got that allegiance, at least. He's got that loyalty seed within him.
Yeah. Except for that was the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Ever.
Yeah, it's dude. Again, I mean, he's my favorite character. I think this dude's tremendous. Oh, what I was going to say was, what was the class? There was a class that before he was teaching. It was like high maths or something like that.
Unlikely maths.
Okay,
where's
so it was
the
just listed
class?
on there.
Where's the
Everywhere.
class? Everywhere. What time now?
So I think even in that's an attempt. That's an attempt he's making to at least plant a seed in people's minds of what naming is. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like because that is kind of the sense. It's everywhere, and it's it's not easy to find. And I think just even in that sense, what Rothfuss is doing through all of that is he's building out Elodin in a massive way, and he's incorporating the way that he is in a lot of different little aspects where we get to experience him, and even just that sense. I think that's even an attempt he was making then, and he's probably frustrated that he didn't have students at that time as well.
I also like when he's talks about he's like, you were in no real danger of being expelled. You're not the first student to call the name of the wind in anger, though you are the first in several years. Yeah. Some strong emotion usually wakes a sleeping mind for the first time. He smiled. The name of the wind came to me when I was arguing with Elxadal. When I shouted it, his braziers exploded in a cloud of burning ash and cinder. He chuckled. What did he do to make you so angry? He refused to teach me the advanced bindings. I was only 14 and in Elir. He told me I would have to wait until I was Relar. I love that aspect of you get Elodin just getting fucking pissed because this guy's holding back knowledge that he wants to know, and he gets so fucking pissed he calls the name of the wind against one of the masters. Blows up his fucking braziers.
And that's another one that leads into a reason to be excited about book 2 is Kavoth's about to get access to these advanced bindings and this additional information. It's unlocking things.
As well as other secrets.
But one thing we did kind of skip over that I thought was pretty great. He asks Elodin, what did you do? I can't remember what you whispered to me. It was a name. It was a name that settled the angry bear, eased it back to sleep. But it is not sleeping so soundly now. We need to rouse it slowly and bring it under your control. Which I thought that was really interesting because that's kind of telling us what we were seeing before. He called the name of the wind. He was seeing the name of the wind. So it was already starting to like awaken within him, which is interesting because the whole idea is this sleeping mind, right? So this sleeping mind is awakening within Kavoth, and he's seeing it gradually. It's fucking great. The conjuring of it, or the sort of cultivation of it that Rothfuss insinuates is great, and so that creates the idea now that it's living within him. So he will see it again. He will name the wind again. It's a matter of getting more and more control over it. And that's exactly what ends up playing out for us as we read through the books. But it's not like it happens 2 chapters from now.
Yeah.
I mean, Rothfuss is really, really, he has a very reasoned and like patient approach in how he feeds it back to us, which is fucking great. Because he kind of
That's a great way of describing it. A patient and reasoned approach. I like that.
Well, it's great because like it takes so long to get it the next time that we kind of forget about it until the moment we're reminded, and then we immediately remember it, but we kind of forget. It happens a lot, man. Like I forget about the university, and he reminds us. In these chapters, I kind of forgot about where we were, and then we get back to it. It's really, really tremendous.
The last 2 parts that I have of interest is when he talks about like he learns, okay, there's secrets. Then he asks if he can get back in the archives, can't get back in there. But then he's like, all right, I got a secret for you. What about the stone door in the archives? And in a lone laugh, oh no. You don't aim for small secrets, do you? He clapped me on the back as if I'd made an especially good joke. Valeritas, God. I can still remember what it was like standing down there looking at the door, wondering. He laughed again. Merciful Telu, it almost killed me. No, you don't get to go behind the 4-plate door. But, since you are Relar, he's like, I will admit that it exists. He gave me a solemn wink. So, we talked about before, I think this is not only like when he's like, it almost killed me, I think he's being literal. Like he went behind the door, he met King Phasia, and almost was killed by King Phasia. I think this is likely what fucking cracked Elodin and his student is going behind the door. Because he's not just like, no, you don't get to know what's behind the 4-plate door. He says, no, you don't get to go behind the 4-plate door. So I think there is a way behind the 4-plate door. Elodin's been behind it. And so I think Kavoth is going to figure that out and go behind there. So I think it's baked into the cake because, he's got to rescue the princesses from the Barrow King. It's almost certainly that the Barrow King is behind the 4-plate door.
I believe in the Mario Brothers theory, and this is how it holds up.
Yeah.
So yeah, it has to work. There is a part
especially
here,
because Elodin is Luigi, so Elodin maybe goes with Kavoth.
Yeah. Well, so there is a part here that I did kind of want to deal with a little bit because first, since you are a Raylar, I will admit that it exists. So when I've read that in the past, I just kind of thought it was kind of an interesting, almost like a comic relief type moment in a way. But this time around, it kind of made me feel like, all right, so what is it that we think does exist that actually doesn't? Because that's what I feel like he's hinting at when he says that it does actually exist. Well, clearly it exists. He sees it. You stand in front of it, Valeritas, whatever, and the 4 plates, people see it. People know it's there. There's details about it that are described, but it kind of hints to me that there are certain things in the world that are illusions that aren't real. That hint at an unreality or a certain or a supposed reality that aren't actually real. I hadn't read it that way before. That's why I was kind of interested in just at least bringing it up.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, I don't know. I don't have any other examples, but I've always taken it as him being his fucking quirky self and being like, hey, well, now that you are a Relar, I'll admit to the obvious thing that fucking it exists. Like,
well,
I'm just taking it as a quirky thing, not not a deeper thing. I can't think of anything else that, in the way that you're describing, I can't think of anything else.
That's it. I thought that was interesting, Tim. The way I read it was that he's talking about, the Chandrian, the demons, or all the different the Adem. No, the Emir. Excuse me, the Emir. The things that they're not talking, that they're not admitting to existing, and what Dan, maybe believes that the information that they're trying to pull from the archives and so on and so forth, that he's saying, okay, well, now that you're Relar, I can admit to you that certain things that we always say don't exist actually do.
So, like in this case, it would be Phasia exists, the Amir exist, the Chandrian exist. Yeah. So, I mean, that's right. A whole lot. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I love the way Elodin speaks, man. I love the back and forth when Kavos says, I still don't understand about names. I will teach you to understand. The nature of names cannot be described, only experienced and understood. I think that's just like a tremendous way to sort of what we talked about earlier, which is, like what he's been trying to make people see is that you can allow it to come to you. Stop trying so hard. Stop grabbing at my tits. I always come back to that because it's such a great example of that, allowing it rather than, trying to grasp for it. Because when you try to grasp for it, like he does with the, whatever that thing's called, the poppy seed or whatever that's another great example where he's grabbing for the thing that's floating in the air.
Yeah.
And then he finally stops and it literally goes in his mouth. He's all choking on it and shit. They're great, visual metaphors, man. And, they work out perfectly, especially for it to be done through Elodin as well.
So when he starts talking and trying to describe the color blue, did you guys remember the homage that Rothfuss is paying there to that movie with Cher, Mask?
No, I've never watched this movie. I cannot.
You never seen the movie Mask?
No.
I just remember dude's awful face. That's all I mean, that's all I remember.
And if you remember, he dates
Corky or something. Is it Corky? Is that his name? Something like that.
I don't remember what his name is, but he's got a girlfriend that's blind, and so he's trying to.
That's right.
He's trying to explain to his blind girlfriend color, and so he gives her a rock that he takes out of a really hot. I think it's a hot pot of water and says, this is red. And then he gives her a cold one and says, this is blue. And it's like this profound moment for her to understand the colors. Anyway, that's what I
remember. What that reminds me of is there's a classic Family Guy clip where the blind girl's feeling his face and she's like, oh my God, what is this? And he's like, but I'm beautiful on the inside. But she's like, yeah, but there's a limit. Like, what's this now? And she's like feeling his massive bar up top his head, like above it, like where his eyebrows are. It's like, what is this? Like, it's fucking great. Oh man.
Yeah. Blue, blue, blue.
No, I do. I mean, the whole thing with words and trying to describe that, this does a great push and pull with Kavos' need to try to understand things. And, Kavos has said before, you can describe everything. Can you describe, and then, if you understand a thing, you can describe it. Can you describe all the things you understand? Of course. What color is that blue boy's shirt? Blue. What do you mean by blue? And then he's like, you got me. So the first example, he's like, you fucking got me. He doesn't apparently have a cold rock to hand to him to say, here's blue.
Right. And the way Rothfuss writes this part here is just, it's so fucking well written. Like he's like, it's a word. Words are pale shadows of forgotten names. As names have power, words have power. Words can light fire in the minds of men. Words can wring tears from the hardest hearts. There are 7 words that will make a person love you. There are 10 words that will break a strong man's will. But a word is nothing but a painting of a fire. A name is the fire itself. That's fucking Rothfuss, man. Like some of the fucking little sentences or paragraphs that he has is where it's like, that's amazing fucking writing.
Yeah. Well, but in this also, so I wonder, is someone going to say these 10 words to Kavoth? Is that what's going to turn him into Coat?
You know, I forgot to look up. I wanted to look up when Elodin was doing his little step, slide, and then he ran into that big fucking, dude working at the crookery, and then he fucking dressed him down and scared the shit out of him. And kind of broke his will, where he's just fucking pounding and scraping. I was like, I wonder if he said fucking 10 words to him there, but I didn't remember to look it up.
Yeah, I was curious because I was like, I wonder if this is just foreshadowing towards, a 10-word statement that's gonna, break someone.
Yeah, it could.
But, I also I like where you went with, or where he continued to go with Kavoth. My head was swimming by this point. I still don't understand. And Elodin lays a hand on his shoulder. Using words to talk of words is like using a pencil to draw a picture of itself on itself. Impossible, confusing, frustrating. And then that's where he lifts his hands high above his head as if stretching for the sky. But there are other ways to understanding. Laughing, he shouted, laughing like a child, and he throws both arms to the cloudless arch of sky above, still laughing. Look! Blue, blue, blue. It's so great. I just like picturing this dude. That is a master. That's the most powerful guy at the university, and all these students walking around, seeing this guy just pointing at the sky, yelling like a fucking 3-year-old. It's pretty great.
So
yeah, again, you picture him kind of like dancing. It's another one of these visuals where he doesn't even need to say a lot. You know the character already, and he starts going to point at the sky. But I just picture him dancing and skipping and screaming.
I mean, I guess you can kind of also read that as like the power is everywhere and the opportunities are endless, right? This is blue, but we point to something else and learn the name of it and have control over it, bro. Go for it. Like Neo with the Matrix, like understand all of it. The shape of things, the names of things, like, and control everything as long as you allow yourself to, tap into the chi, as we've talked about. Drink his tea and whatever, whatever you get there,